Last week, once again, I spent much of my time in the valley of the shadow of death. A good and close friend of mine died from COVID, and I was honored to be able to preside over his funeral liturgy. That valley of the shadow of death is one of the most holy and sacred places that we encounter in our lifetime. For it is the one place that we cannot deny the presence of God, something that is beyond us and our control. For most of our lives, we can steam along pretty well on our own. We have proven that once again this last year, that we would prefer to believe there are no authorities over us, outside of us, that can call our lives into question, that can demand that we do things in a particular way. We showed it again and again in our reticence to obey, to fight, and to ignore, even when it was not in our best interest. Go figure. We are an independent lot, that we are. And that also includes our belief in God. We push God to the margins and ask God to show up when we want God to, or stay away when we just as soon God turned his back on what we're doing. But in that valley of the shadow of death, all our independence, all our control, all of our best abilities are revealed as fantasy. We will not live forever. We will not flourish endlessly. The day will come when we shall all die. It is a rude awakening for many to recognize that there is nothing that can be done to prevent that event in our lives. We shall die. It is there in that valley of the shadow of death, a most holy and sacred place, that we most intimately encounter God. Paul reminds us in that ancient hymn that he shares in his letters to the Philippians that God humbled himself and became obedient unto human life in the form of Jesus the Christ. He came to earth as one of us and experienced life fully, even death. It is there on the cross that God meets our death and promises us new life, new hope, a light shining in the midst of the dark valley, hope in the midst of our grief and pain, and a promise of joy restored. It is there where our tears are mingled with God's tears, and our pain is felt by God. God greets us in the midst of that valley of the shadow of death over and over and over again in our lives, that we may be sustained in our weariness and eventually have our joy restored. Sometimes our only song is weeping, our only sound is gasping breath. Sometimes it seems that God is sleeping, while our brief lives are bound in death. Who hears the song, our sorrow's sorrow, and offers hope to calm our fears. When all our words seem frail and hollow, God heeds our prayers within our tears. Sometimes we catch the faintest humming, a far-off tune our hearts know well. Sometimes we sense the Spirit coming, our song returns, our voices swell. The Spirit sings, though we are shaken, and Christ has shed our heartfelt cries. Restore our weary souls, awaken to join God's song that never dies.